Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. He hadn't noticed it at first, just a ripple in the air, a flash of something across Caroline's face as his mother asked if she'd like more rice. It wasn't until the laughter came, the tight little smirk she passed to his cousin Mia like a whispered secret, that it hit him. Caroline wasn't laughing with his mother. She was laughing at her. Jude looked up from his plate, fork stilled mid-air. The scent of garlic and turmeric hovered warm in the dining room. His mother had spent all afternoon cooking. Jude had watched her wrap the rice in banana leaves, humming to herself in that off-key way that used to embarrass him as a boy. But now he felt something else entirely, a protective ache, like a bruise blooming just under the skin. Caroline caught his eye and gave him the same smile she gave his coworkers. Polite, glossy, just barely human. "Sorry," she said lightly, brushing a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "Your mom's voice is just so charming, like a character from one of those old Bollywood movies." His cousin coughed. No one laughed. Jude's mother blinked slowly, still holding the serving spoon. She didn't ask what Caroline meant. She didn't ask anything at all, just offered another quiet, obliging smile. It was the same one she'd worn years ago when the neighbor kids shouted slurs through their screen door. The same one she'd worn when his father left. "Amma," Jude said, pushing back from the table. "Sit down. I'll serve." His mother nodded, her eyes soft. She said something in Tamil, gently, like a ribbon. Caroline's smile tightened. After dinner, Jude stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, letting the water run too long over a single dish. Caroline leaned against the door frame, swirling the last of her wine in the glass. "She's sweet," she said, in a tone that meant simple. "But maybe she shouldn't cook everything with so much spice. I'm pretty sure my mouth is numb." Jude turned to face her. "That's how she cooks. It's what she knows." "Well," Caroline shrugged, "we can tone it down for the wedding, right?" The wedding. He felt a pulse of static behind his eyes. He couldn't remember exactly when the shift had happened, when Caroline had stopped being someone who made him feel understood and started being someone who needed him to explain everything. When her curiosity about his background turned into curated fascination. "You're lucky," she used to say. "You've got culture." As if it were a costume he could wear for effect, then peel off before dinner parties. "I'll talk to her," Jude lied, drying his hands on a towel that still smelled like his mother's perfume. Jasmine, and something earthy underneath. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because of the guest list, or the venue, or Caroline's sudden insistence that his mother wear beige to blend in with the wedding colors. It was the sound of that laugh, the way it had sliced the room in two. When he was 7, a teacher had called on him to read aloud. He'd stumbled over a word, geography, and heard a boy in the back mimic the way his mother pronounced it. Geography. He hadn't corrected him. He hadn't even looked back, just read faster, quieter, hoping no one noticed how red his face got. But someone had noticed. His mother had. That night, she'd rubbed his back in circles and told him, in her careful English, "Your voice is good, Kana. Never feel small for how we sound." He'd forgotten that moment, until Caroline's laugh brought it back like a bruise remembering a fall. The next morning, he found himself scrolling through Tamil poetry quotes online. He didn't know what he was looking for. Something real, maybe. something rooted. The words looked like vines, elegant, complex, impossible to decode. He realized with a sharp pang that he couldn't read most of them. He'd never learned. His mother had stopped teaching him when he was 10 after he begged her to stop because it made him feel weird. Now, he felt something worse. At brunch with Caroline's friends that weekend, someone mentioned visiting India. It's like color overload, the woman said. The smells, the sounds, it's insane, but kind of magical, like living in a movie. Caroline glanced at Jude, squeezed his thigh under the table. Jude's family is from there. It's why I want some Indian touches in the wedding. Just enough to be fun. Just enough. Not too much. He laughed, but it didn't feel like his laugh. It felt borrowed, thin. Back home, his mother called and asked if he could come by. She had a new shirt for him, one of the linen ones she always found on clearance and ironed 3 times before wrapping it like a gift. He almost said no. He almost said he was too busy, but he heard something in her voice. A carefulness, like she was already apologizing. When he arrived, the shirt was waiting, folded with care. She'd made tea, the good kind, with cardamom and a splash of condensed milk. They didn't talk much. She didn't bring up the dinner, neither did he. But when she looked at him, she looked as if she knew, as if she'd always known. And Jude, for the first time in months, felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not sadness, just a quiet knowing. A voice waking up inside him that said, "Don't forget who taught you how to love without words." The wedding binder had grown 3 inches thicker in a week. Caroline's handwriting looped in every margin, neat and assertive, with arrows pointing toward words like linen rentals and floral palette. Jude stared at the page, the tip of a pen resting against his temple, but none of it made sense anymore. Not the cascading orchids, not the monogrammed napkins, not even the string quartet she'd insisted would soften the cultural edges. "You haven't picked your groomsman yet," Caroline said, standing in front of their shared calendar, already halfway through penciling in her next hair trial. "You need to make a decision. It looks bad when it's all last minute." Jude didn't look up. "I asked Aaron." Caroline blinked. "Your cousin Aaron?" He nodded. "Isn't he the one who brought curry to Thanksgiving?" "Yeah," Jude said, meeting her gaze now. "That's him." She gave a soft, diplomatic laugh, as if trying to find her footing again. "Right. Well, just make sure he doesn't bring any of that to the rehearsal dinner. You know my parents can't handle spicy food." The comment slid past him like ice over skin. He was learning not to react. Lately, everything about their wedding had turned into an edit of who he was. Aaron was too much. His mother's sorry was too bold. Even his last name had been discussed, lightly, when Caroline jokingly suggested she could hyphenate it for aesthetics. Jude had started waking up earlier than her, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dim light and staring at the window. He didn't reach for his phone anymore. He didn't check emails. He just sat in the silence and tried to feel like himself. The last time he felt that way was at his mother's, sipping tea while her radio played old film songs softly in the background. She'd handed him a tray of homemade sweets and said, "Caroline is very beautiful, but she is not proud of you." He had stared at her, not angry, just stunned. "She wants you to change your voice, Kana. One day, she'll want your children to change theirs too." The words hadn't landed all at once. They came back in pieces later. At work, in the grocery store, in the middle of conversations where he realized he hadn't been listening. Caroline, meanwhile, had become the picture of efficiency. Every day brought new samples, mood boards, appointments. "I just want everything to be perfect," she'd say, curling up beside him with her laptop glowing between them. "For us, for our future." Jude watched her closely now. The way she used us when she really meant me. The way she said family, but never asked about his. One evening, they went to her parents for dinner. Her mother had prepared baked chicken and green beans, the kind of meal Jude had eaten in college, with a fork in one hand and nostalgia in the other. Her father poured him a glass of wine and asked what his people thought about the market downturn. Jude smiled politely. "They probably think it's a good time to invest, but I can't speak for all of them." There was an awkward pause. Caroline cleared her throat. Back at their apartment, she turned to him in the hallway. "You embarrassed him." He blinked. "He embarrassed himself." "You don't have to make everything a statement, Jude." He stared at her. "You think I'm the one performing?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just that look, mild annoyance wrapped in concern. The same expression she wore when he corrected her pronunciation of his mother's name. When he told her he didn't want a country club wedding. When he asked her, gently, not to call turmeric that yellow stuff. There were days it was easier to pretend, to play along, to nod when she said she wanted just a touch of heritage, a sitar during cocktail hour, samosas at the welcome table, henna if it could be washed off before photos. But pretending was becoming exhausting. Jude started spending more time at his mother's apartment. He didn't tell Caroline. He'd say he had errands or needed time to think through work proposals. His mother never asked why he was there. She just made him food and handed him books, Tamil English dictionaries, poetry collections, faded photographs in cracked frames. She began speaking to him in her mother tongue again, softly, slowly, like watering a plant she wasn't sure would grow. Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he just listened. And each time, something small and tender unfolded inside him, like a paper bird finally remembering how to fly. One afternoon, she pulled out an old wedding photo of her and Jude's father, long before the divorce. She touched the corner of the picture gently. "Your Appa loved me in his way," she said, "but he wanted to be American more than he wanted to be a husband." Jude swallowed hard. He changed the way he walked, the way he laughed. He even changed the way he prayed. She paused. "But that kind of love, it is not home. It is only survival." Jude thought of Caroline's laugh, her edits, her smirks, her careful, curated version of him. He looked at his mother. "I don't want to survive my marriage," he said. She smiled, a little sadly. "Then don't marry someone who makes you disappear." The words stayed with him for days. Caroline, meanwhile, was finalizing the music selections. She showed him a video of a string quartet performing a Bollywood medley. "Isn't this perfect?" she said. "It'll make your mom feel included." Included. Not welcomed, not honored. Included, as if she were a checkbox on a diversity spreadsheet. Jude nodded, barely. She noticed. "What?" she asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The words were still gathering somewhere deep in his chest. He just smiled and said, "I'll handle the proposal speech." The elevator creaked as it climbed to the third floor, the hum of old machinery echoing in the small box around him. Jude leaned against the wall, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping a folded piece of paper, his latest attempt at writing a proposal speech. The words felt dry, rehearsed, like something from a commercial. He'd written lines about love, partnership, building a future together. But nowhere in that paper did he recognize himself. When the doors opened, the scent of curry leaves, warm rice, and something faintly sweet drifted in. Home. Not the apartment he shared with Caroline, with its gray countertops and decorative cookbooks, but this place, the worn floor tiles, the hand-sewn cushion covers, the rustle of a ceiling fan overhead. His mother opened the door before he knocked, smiling as if she'd sensed him approaching. She wore her soft house sari, her hair pinned loosely, a touch of turmeric on her wrist from cooking. "Come," she said, stepping aside. "I made rasam today. You look tired." He followed her inside, slipping off his shoes without thinking. The television was playing low in the background, an old Tamil drama, all slow glances and swelling music. She handed him a glass of water, the rim cold and dewy, and sat beside him at the table. "You don't look happy," she said, without accusation. Jude shook his head, staring down into the glass. "I'm just thinking about things." She waited. That was her way. She never pried, only made space. "I've been wondering lately," he said quietly, "if I've mistaken being chosen for being loved." Her fingers paused where they were folding a napkin. "She chose me, Caroline, but sometimes I think it was because I was different, not because I was enough." His mother nodded slowly. "Some people want your difference, like a necklace. Beautiful to wear, easy to remove." He looked at her. "Did Appa choose you that way?" She didn't answer right away. She turned the napkin over once, then again. "Your father wanted a wife he could bring to parties. He liked my cooking. He liked my eyes. But he did not like my voice." Jude winced. He said it reminded him he was not from here. "And me?" She looked up. "You reminded him too, but also, you reminded him of hope. That's different." Jude stared at her, throat tight. "I need to ask you something," he said after a moment. "Something real." She nodded once. "Is Appa my father?" The silence that followed was so complete, he could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock. For a moment, he wasn't sure she'd heard him, but then she exhaled, slowly, deliberately. "No," she said. The room didn't tilt or spin. It just grew quieter, like the world had leaned in. "Who?" he asked. She stood, crossed to a drawer, and pulled out an envelope. She handed it to him. Inside was a photograph, a younger version of his mother, arm in arm with a man he didn't recognize. Tall, smiling, kind eyes. Not Indian. "His name was Matthew," she said. "I was in school. We were in love." Jude stared at the photo. "But Appa raised me." He knew. "I told him before we married. He said it didn't matter, that he'd be your father. But over time, it did matter. Not to you, but to him." Jude ran a hand through his hair, the edges of the photo soft beneath his fingers. His identity shifted slightly, not like an earthquake, but like a tide pulling out. He didn't feel lost. He felt unlocked. "You should have told me," he whispered. "I thought about it many times," she said, "but I didn't want you to feel divided." Jude's voice cracked. Too late. She reached across the table, her hand warm over his. "You are not less, Kana. You are more. 2 stories. 2 names. two roots. His chest ached. What happened to him, Matthew? He went back. He didn't want to leave, but his family, they didn't want me. He nodded, a sharp, familiar pain rising. Echoes of Carolyn's mother, politely suggesting they lean into the Western elements of the wedding. Or Caroline herself, suggesting they write their vows in English, because it'll be easier for guests. He looked at the photo again, at the smile that mirrored his. I don't want to marry someone who only wants half of me. His mother didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That night, Jude went home and stood in front of the mirror. He stared at his reflection, not at the suit hanging behind him or the checklist pinned to the fridge, just at himself, at the nose that didn't come from his father, the curls that had never quite laid flat, the skin that didn't match Caroline's in pictures, the accent that only surfaced when he was tired or home or dreaming. He pulled out his phone and opened a language app he downloaded but never used. He selected Tamil. His fingers hovered over the screen, unsure. Then he began typing a sentence, slowly, stumbling. The first few words were awkward, then a little smoother. By midnight, he had written it out. The full sentence, the one that mattered. He read it aloud in a whisper, again and again, until it felt like his. Until it was. The sky threatened rain, a curtain of gray pressing against the windows of the event hall. Inside, golden string lights glittered above the long rows of tables. Soft music floated through the air, classical at first, then a gentle instrumental of some mid-2000s pop song Caroline had labeled timeless. Guests in coordinated pastels sipped champagne and complimented the hors d'oeuvres. Jude stood near the stage, his palms slightly damp, the microphone just a foot away. In the mirror above the drink table, he caught a glimpse of himself in the suit Caroline had chosen. It was slim fit, slate blue, and a little too snug around the shoulders. He couldn't tell if it was the fabric or his chest tightening. Across the room, Caroline laughed with her friends, tilting her head just enough to show off the engagement ring she'd asked to have resized. Twice. She was beautiful. That much was always true. A different kind of beauty from his mother's. Polished, presentational. The kind that fit perfectly inside frames and posed photos. But tonight, Jude wasn't sure. He recognized the woman in the dress with the champagne in her hand and his name already printed next to hers on the seating chart. A hush fell as Caroline's father clinked his glass. Before dinner, he announced, our future son-in-law would like to say a few words. The mic waited. Jude walked toward it slowly, each step measured. The buzz of small talk faded. He could feel the eyes on him, family, co-workers, Carolyn's college friends, his mother seated quietly near the back, her hands folded in her lap. He cleared his throat. Thank you all for being here, he began, his voice steady. It means a lot to us. Caroline beamed. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to bring two families together, he continued. Two cultures, two histories. There was a polite murmur of agreement. And two languages. Caroline blinked. That hadn't been in the rehearsal. He looked toward his mother. Their eyes met, and she gave the smallest nod. In my family, we speak more than English. We speak memory. We speak migration, and we speak Tamil. A beat passed. He took a breath, and slowly, deliberately, shifted into his mother's language. His voice softened, but grew stronger with each word. A proposal. Not the public kind, with champagne and Instagram photos. a different kind, a vow rooted in truth. I see you, I love you, and I honor where I come from. He said it all in Tamil. Every syllable careful, imperfect, but real. Caroline's smile faltered. Jude looked up from the mic. Some of you didn't understand that, he said gently. But that's okay, because it wasn't for everyone. A silence followed, thick, uncertain. And then, from the back of the room, a single clap. His mother. A soft, proud rhythm that didn't need volume to be felt. Then Aaron joined, and Mia, and slowly a few others, tentative, confused, but moved. Carolyn didn't clap. Later, as guests found their seats and the music picked back up, she pulled him aside, voice sharp behind her smile. What the hell was that? My voice, he said simply. The one I almost forgot how to use. You humiliated me. He tilted his head. Did I? Or did I just stop translating? She stared at him, eyes wide. I don't understand you. I know, he said. That's the problem. The rain finally came, soft at first, then steady. Jude stepped outside under the awning, loosening his tie, the cool air settling on his skin like relief. His mother joined him, handing him a folded napkin. Inside was a piece of dried mango. You spoke well, she said. I spoke real, he replied. She smiled. That's better. Behind them, the party carried on. Toasts were made, glasses clinked. But Jude didn't look back. He stood with the woman who taught him his first words, the one who never needed him to be less of anything. And for the first time in months, he felt whole. The next morning, the sky was clear, and the air smelled like wet leaves and jasmine. Jude walked the quiet neighborhood path near his mother's apartment, the same one where she used to hold his hand tight when he was 5 and still afraid of barking dogs. Now, he walked alone, but her presence was with him, not in the grip of a hand, but in the steady rhythm of his breath, in the words that still echoed in his ears from the night before. There was no dramatic breakup, no throne ring or public scene. Caroline had gone quiet after the party, her disappointment folding inward. Jude suspected the conversations ahead would be uncomfortable, maybe even painful, but they would be honest, and that finally felt like peace. Later, as he sat with his mother at the kitchen table, he unfolded the linen shirt she had given him months ago. He smoothed the fabric gently, his hands slower now, more attentive. She poured him tea, and they sat without filling the silence. It wasn't the kind of quiet that came from avoidance. It was the quiet that came from understanding. Outside, the world was still busy with weddings and parties and plans. But Jude had stopped rushing, stopped translating, stopped trying to explain his roots in small, tidy words. He didn't need approval to belong. He didn't need permission to honor his past. And he didn't need a perfect love to feel worthy of one. He only needed the truth. And now he had it.